Monday morning check-in, Lewis Conway Jr. Appreciate you showing up again. You see, I've gone back to what most folks know me as, and or have seen me as. I think it was, sometimes you get to a point to where, you start being authentic to who folks have known you for, or who you were to get to the place that you are now, right? And I think for me, that's what happened with these videos, right? Is that I kind of jumped in talking about policy. I jumped in talking about organizing and just a lot of things that I was not talking about when I started this thing. And what I mean by this thing is this journey. For 15 years of my life, I didn't talk about my past. For 15 years of my life, I felt like I wasn't qualified to do the things that I'm doing. And so, 12 years into it, I found a key that helped me begin to overcome my barriers. I found a key that allowed me to begin to change my thinking. But the struggle is that the thinking that got me into the advocacy space isn't the same thinking that works in the advocacy space, right? Because in the advocacy space, you realize that there's a systemic inequality that affects, the majority of folks who are black and brown and who are poor. But when I came into the space where I needed to transition from who I was, you see, before I was Lewis Conway Jr., it was a whole life I lived, right? And in order to stay out of prison, I had to find work. And so one of the ways I found work was in the music business and in the film business. And so I spent, probably 10 years under the pseudonym of Louis Fats, right? And so when I began to transition, and that transition happened as a result of a health opportunity, as some folks have heard me talk about, but that health opportunity gave me a chance to invest in my purpose as opposed to my talents, right? And I think, as I began to struggle with, am I giving folks information I needed when I came home? Am I giving folks the information I needed to help really make the switch? And I realized I really wasn't. I had to be honest with myself and say, you know what, let's recalibrate, let's go back to the basics. And that's really what this, I want to spend some time talking to you about, is going back to the basics and sharing with you some of the information that I used. It was a good 12, 15-year run where I was really trying to figure out my purpose, where I was really trying to figure out why I was repeating the same mistakes over and over, why I would get right to the precipice of success, right to the edge, right when I was about to bubble, right? Things would fall off completely. And I couldn't figure out why. Until I came into the technology, the thinking, the science of law of attraction. And I've been really kind of tiptoeing around it because it doesn't mesh with my advocacy world. And I realize that some of the folks that watch these videos know me from my advocacy world, and they don't know me from how I came into the advocacy world. And how I came into the advocacy world is through really sharing the techniques that I used, and I kind of encapsulated, I put it all in a book, Change the Weather. And as I thought about, the re-release of Change the Weather, as I thought about the journal that I'm including in that re-release, I realized that I really needed to share with folks kind of that transition, kind of what happened to bring me to, being a strip club DJ, being a music video director, being an actor, being, everything that it was that I did to stay free. a transition happened. And when that transition happened, all of those things that I went through for those 12 or 15 years, I was able to put to use in the advocacy world. But it didn't happen overnight. There was a period and there was some techniques that I used. And sometimes I feel like I'm hiding the knowledge because I don't talk about it. But I don't talk about it because, for some, if I tell you, if you haven't been at the bottom and been desperate enough to try whatever, it really doesn't make sense to you. And so I've been kind of hesitant, but then I thought about it. I was like, you know what? I needed someone to tell me at my very lowest how to get out of that spot. And if I have the information that helped me, and then I struggle with the way I learned the information, it came through the lens of financial gain and wealth. Right? That's kind of how I learned it. But in that time, I needed to know how to make money. Like, I remember being able to only send in $20 for child support to avoid going back to jail. I remember, having to negotiate my freedom and the custody of my children versus how much I owed in arrears. So there was a point in time that when I came into this information, wealth was part of it, but then I realized it wasn't just the wealth that was propelling it. It was my changed thinking and how I began to feel. Not about myself, but just about things overall. And once I was able to change how I saw things, I was able to change how I thought about things, which changed how I felt about things. And I feel convicted that I'm not sharing with you the techniques that I use. So going forward, we're going to talk about changing the weather. We're going to talk about what made me write my book, Change the Weather. We're going to go through the curriculum I share in jails and prisons to help men and women change their lives. I'm giving it to you for free. And I'm sharing it with you because it's what I needed to make the switch. And I feel like I've been dropping a lot of information, but I'm really not connecting. And so I'm recalibrating, and I'm bringing to you the information that I used. And I'm going back to the basics. I'm putting on my jacket, and just really going back to how you know me, right? So I'm going to be delivering some videos. We're going to be talking about changing the weather, WHETHER, and what that means, and how I've used the law of attraction. I'll share my story with you. I'll share the techniques. And over, the next coming weeks, I may even begin to drop on video week. We'll see. But in the meantime, thank you for showing up Monday morning. I think the message I want to leave you with is, it's never going to be easy, right? And the more that you try to become the person you need to be, the harder it's going to get, and the more life is going to move against you. But what you have to know is that movement isn't to stop you, it's to grow you. And you got to get to a point to where you look at obstacles as opportunities. And so this week, when you are faced with an obstacle, I don't want you to stop. I want you to figure out a way to keep going and look around the edges of that closed door. Even if there's no knob there, look for a way to open it. All right, Monday morning. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me. LewisConwayJr.com. If you haven't gone there already, subscribe to the channel. We got some t-shirts and some hats and stuff that you can check out if you wish. All right, in the meantime, I will see you next week or later in the week. We'll see. You guys have a good one. Talk to you later.